Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do the 27th question of my database management systems practical question series. So without further ado, let's go to our question list here. You can see under day we complete the question 26 and under day 13 here's the question 27. Okay. First, I have to remind you we are continuing with questions started from question 17. So, if you didn't watch the previous videos, I think it's better you watch the videos first. Otherwise, you will not understand what we are doing here because we are using a database we created in question 18 to answer this question. Okay, let's go to our question. Here's the first part. What is the number of students studying in class 11A? Okay, now I'm going to show you my database. Here's the database exam mark DB. That's the database we use to answer to this question. You can see these are the tables, and we entered some details to these tables in previous videos. Okay, now let me show you the student table. Here's the student table, and you can see there are attributes: index number, first name, last name, like that. And also there's an attribute called class ID. uh, Here we didn't mention the class name in this table, but there's only the class ID. So in the class table you can see that's the table we use to store the class name. Here 11A and 11B, and the ID from class table to student table. So now I'm going to use the subquery method. Let me clear this one. Subquery method to get that answer. So let me first I like to show you the details recorded in the student table using a select query. So here's the first one: select asterisk from asterisk means I need all, it will output all the attributes and their values related to this table. Okay, here's the table in exam mark database, and here is the table I want, student. Let me show you that result. Here in the result area you can see the result. Now you can see there are both IDs recorded in this table. That means there are students who related to both of these classes 11A and 11B, but we need only, let's go back to the question, only the class 11A students. Okay, now we have to write a condition to filter this data. So I'm using the keyword where I told you I'm going to use the subquery method. So we have to filter the data using the class name in class table, but before that we have to mention the main table, the attribute we are going to filter the data in the main table. Okay, so in student table, class ID should equal to the value outputted from this subquery. I'm going to write the subquery within these brackets and it will output the ID. You can use equal mark or keyword in. If you use the keyword in, that means there will be more values outputted from this query, but in this case this query will only output a single ID because the class name 11A had only one ID, so we can use the equal mark. And here's the next select query: select. Now we can't use asterisk because we don't need all the attributes, we need only the class ID. So in class table, class ID, that's the value I want to output, and from exam mark DB, and in the class table here's the next condition. We don't need all the IDs, we need only the ID of class 11A. So here's the condition where in class table class name should equal to class 11A. Okay, let's execute this one. You can see the result changed to this final answer, and the ID of the class ID attribute is only number 1. Okay, now we find our final result. Now we can count this value. So there's a keyword called count here, count, and it will count whatever the attribute we input to that function, and it will count the records recorded in that specific attribute. Okay, here in the brackets I'm going to write I need to count the index number. You can see this is the index number attribute, and this attribute will never duplicate, so I'm going to use that one. So in student table I need to count the values recorded in the index number. So let's execute this one. Here it's 4, the count is 4, and also we can change the attribute name, because this attribute name, you can see count student index number underscore number, that's not a very good attribute name, so we can change that one using the keyword as, and here's the new attribute name. I'm changing it to student count. Student count. Here I changed to student count, and we completed the first part of the question. Here's the query we used to get this answer. Okay, let's go to the second one. Find the number of students who scored between 40 and 90 marks in all subjects in first term examination. Here in the question, you can see there are two conditions we have to mention to filter the data here. The students who scored between 40 and 90 marks, and also first term examination. In all subjects means we don't have to filter these details related to subjects, because we can find all the subjects by filtering these two details. Let me show you the database again here. Now in this case, here is the main table we have to use to answer to that question, because this is the table which records all the marks of the students, not the student table, the student exam mark record table. Okay, now I'm going to write a select query to that specific table. So you know how to write a select query. Select asterisk. For now I need all the details, so I'm using the asterisk marks. Asterisk from, here's the database name, exam mark DB, and I need the details, all the details of student exam mark record table. Okay, here is the result, and it will show all the records in student exam mark record table. Okay, now let's write our conditions here, where, and here's the first condition. I am going to filter the data using the term. We need to filter the data using the name first term. Okay, I'm going to use the subquery method for this one too. So before everything we have to mention the attribute in the main table we are going to filter. So I'm filtering in student exam mark record table. I'm filtering the exam term ID, and it should equal to here the output which will output from this subquery. So here's the subquery select. I'm writing a select query to output the ID of the first term. Here you can see this table. This is the exam term table, and that's the table we use to record the details of the terms. First term, second term, that's the term name, and also the exam date. So I'm writing a select query to that one. I need to output the term ID. So in exam term table, I need to output the term ID from, here I'm mentioning the table exam mark DB exam term. Now there are two details, first term and second term, but we only need the ID of the first term test. So Here's the condition to this subquery, where in exam term table the term name should equal to first term. Okay. Here again you can see we don't need to use the keyword in, because this query will only output a single ID. So let's execute this one. Here the exam term ID in the result set changed to number 1. You can see only the number 1 records are showing here. Number 1 means the first term records here. First term ID is number 1. Okay. We filter the data using a condition, and here's the next condition. I'm using the keyword n because I need to when this query execute, it need to meet both of these conditions. First one, the exam term name should equal to first term, and also here the second one, I'm going to mention the mark range 40 to 90. So in student exam mark record table, the mark, here you can see there are two details. Let me show you. 40 to 90 marks. So there are two values we have to mention. So in this case, I'm going to use the keyword in, and here's the sorry, not the keyword in, between. Okay, this is the keyword, and it will filter the records within these two range 40 to 90. So 40 and 90. The brackets are not very relevant here, so we don't have to use the brackets. And let's execute this one. Here you can see in the mark area only the marks above 40 and marks below 90 are showing here, and that's the final answer. Now we can count these values. Here I'm using the keyword count, and I need to count the index numbers. So student exam mark record, sorry, not mark, the index, sorry, student index number. Okay, that's what I want to count, and here is the answer 20. And also we can change the attribute name of the result using the keyword as, and I'm changing it to number of students. Okay, here's the final answer, and we completed the second part of the 27th question. Here's the third one. What is the number of students appearing in the subject of science in second term examination out of the students studying in all classes in grade 11? Okay. In this question, again, there are two conditions. We have to filter the data using the subject name science and also the exam term name second term test. And we don't have to filter the data using the class name, because in the question they say we have to find the records related to both classes, grade 11A and 11B. Okay. Let's go back to our HDSQL browser and let me show you the main table. Here's the table. It's going to be the student exam mark record table again, because that's the table which records the subject of the student and also the exam term and the marks. In this case, we need only these two attributes, subject and term, because we have to filter the data using those, the values recorded in those two attributes. Okay. Here I'm going to write select query again to the student exam mark record table. So select asterisk. I need all the details for now. That's why I use the mark asterisk. And here's the database in exam term DB, and this is the table. I need the details of student exam mark record. Here these are the data related to the student exam mark record table. Okay, now we can filter the data. Again, I'm going to use the subquery method. You can see in the question, in these three questions, uh, we have to find only the count of the student, or the number of students appeared in under these conditions. So you can use there are two methods to select or get the answer to that question: the subquery method or the joining method. We can use the inner join or the self join method to this one. But if you use the joining method, you have to join the student exam mark record table, the student table, and also the exam term table and subject table, everything. And it'll generate more data, uh, more unwanted data than the data we actually want, because when we join these three tables, it will output a very big result. But sorry, but actually we don't need that much data and filter a simple data out from that huge data list. But in subquery method, we only going to address the student exam mark record table. You can see in the answer, when we use the subqueries to get the ID, we are requesting only the ID, and it will filter the data relevant to that ID and also the exam term table. So we are filtering the data only in this main table, student exam mark record table. So there are less unwanted data than the inner join methods. That's why I use the subquery method when the question say to output the number of students, that simple kind of things. So let's go to our question and write our subquery. First, we have to use the keyword where. And here's the first condition. I'm going to filter the data using the term name first. So I'm going to write a select query to the exam term table. But before that, we have to mention the attribute in the main table. We are going to filter the data. So in student exam mark record table, I'm going to fill the data recorded in exam term table, and it should equal to the value outputted from this select query. Select, I'm going to write a select query to output the ID of the second term test. So in exam term table, I need to output the term ID from, we have to mention the table in exam mark DB exam term table, and this is the condition. Here again there are two records in student exam mark record table, but we need only the ID of the second term test, which is number 2. So where in exam term table, the term name should equal to second term. Let's execute this one, and if we write the query correct, it will change the result, actually the value in exam term ID attribute to number 2. So let's execute this one. Here you can see it changed to number 2, and only the second term marks are showing here. Now we can write our next condition to filter the data using the subject ID. So I'm going to use the keyword n. Here's the keyword n, and in student exam mark record table, I'm mentioning the attribute in the main table, and subject ID should equal to the value outputted from this subquery select. I need to output the ID of the subject. So in the subject table, here we are in the subject table. These are the three subjects: mathematics, science, and Sinhala, and literature. And we have to output the value ID number 2. So for that, we have to mention the attribute we want to output after this select query execute. So I need to output the subject ID. From here's the table subject in exam mark DB subject table, where this is the keyword, this is the condition which will execute when this subquery execute, and I need to output the value in subject table. Subject name should equal to science. Okay, let's execute this one, and if we write the query correct, it will change the ID of the main table. This is the main table to number 2 in the subject attribute. Here I execute this one, and these are the final answers. Subject ID is number 2, which is the science, and exam term ID is number 2 also, which is the second term ID. And these are the final records. Now we can write our count keyword and input the student index number to this count keyword, and when this code execute, it will count how many records in the result set. So in student exam mark record table, I need to count the student index number. Here this is the final answer, number 8. There are 8 students who face to the science subject in second term test, and I'm going to change the attribute name as, and this is the new attribute name, number of students. Okay, let's execute this one. Here is the final answer, number of students, and this is the query we used to get this answer. And we completed the third part of the question. Let's move on to the fourth one. Find the following details of 11A class students who scored more than 60 marks in mathematics in the second term examination. Okay, this is a different kind of question. In this question, we have to show here admission number, first name, last name, marks, and date of examination as the answer. So there are specific attributes we have to show in our result, and also we have to filter the data using these conditions. First one is class 11A. We have to filter the data using the class name and also the marks. Here more than 60 marks, and again the subject mathematics, and here this is the same one, the second term examination. So in class and also the marks and subject, and after that exam term. So let's go back to our Hades SQL browser. Let me clear this one, and let me show the tables here. Student exam mark record table is the table which will record the marks of the student and also the subjects and the exam term. So this one will be the main table because this one has the connection to all other tables. To student table, you can see the index number foreign from student table, and after that subject ID foreign from subject table, and exam term ID foreign from exam term table. So if we are going to show the first name and the last name of the students under these conditions, here student table is the table which records the details of the student. So we have to join these two tables together, and after that we have to filter the data using the class table. So we have to join that table too, and again we have to filter the data using the exam term and the subject. So you can see we have to connect all these 5 tables. In the previous question, I told you I use the subquery method because there will be more unwanted data if you use the inner join method. But in this case, you can see we have to we have to show all of these attributes: admission number, first name, last name, mark, date of examination, like that. So these attributes are in different tables. First name and last name in student table, marked attribute in student exam mark record table, and date of examination in exam term table. You can see in this case it's not very relevant, or it's not very suitable to use the subquery method for answer this question. We have to use the inner join method. So only these kinds of questions, there are more details involved in the question. We have to use the inner join method. But if the question is, we have to show only a specific data in a specific table, we can use the subquery method. Okay. Here I'm going to join all 5 tables because we have to use the inner join method. So here's the first one. I'm writing a select query, select asterisk. For now I need all the details, and from, here's the first table in exam mark DB. I'm going to join the, let me show you the student exam mark details. So here let's execute this one. Here are the exam mark records, and I'm joining using the inner join method. Inner join method, I'm going to join in exam mark database. I'm joining the student table to student exam mark record table. When you use the inner join method and join 2 tables, you have to mention the connection between these 2 tables. Let me show you that one. Here in the student exam mark record table, the student index number is the attribute which foreign from this table student. So that's the connection. So in student exam mark record table, the index number should equal to the index number in student table. So that's the connection. Here when I execute the query, it will join all the records in these 2 tables in a corresponding order, and you can see in the first record student index number 1 is equal to the record recorded in student table stu underscore 001. So that's the connection, and here is the next table I'm joining all 4 tables together. So here let me highlight this one. In the class table, I showed you in the previous question the class ID foreign from class table. So when we join, when we are going to filter the data using the class table, for the class name, we have to join that table too. So I'm joining the class table in exam mark DB. The class table, this is the connection. The class ID in class table should equal to the class ID in student table. Sorry, not this one. Class ID. Okay. Let's execute this one here. This is the final answer. Sorry, this is the final answer of this query. It joined all 3 tables, and here is the next joining. Next table I'm going to join in a join. I'm joining the subject table and the exam term table. First I'm going to join the subject table. So again in the exam mark DB, I'm joining the subject table on. This is the connection. In subject table, subject ID should equal to the subject ID in student exam mark record table. Okay, let's execute this one too. Here we join the subject table to this one too. Okay, here's the last table. I'm going to join the exam term table. So in exam mark DB, I'm joining the exam term table on the connection. Here the exam term ID in exam term table should equal to the exam term ID in student exam mark record table. Here we combine all 5 tables together. Now we can write our condition to filter the data. Okay. Here I'm using the where keyword, and this is the first condition. We have to filter the data using the class, only class 11A students. So let's go back, and in class table you can see this is not like the subquery method. We don't have to write select queries to every table. We can directly call the directly call the attribute, because we combined all tables together. Now these attributes are working as they are in a single table, so we can directly call the attribute in different tables. So in class table, better you mention the name of the table, and class name should equal to class 11A. Here, class 11A. Let's execute this one, and here you can see only the class 11A records. This is the attribute class name, and only class 11A records are showing here. And this is the next condition. I'm using the keyword and let's filter the data using the subject name. So let's go back. In subject table, subject name should equal to mathematics. Okay, mathematics, and let's execute this one. Here you can see only the mathematics marks are showing here. Mathematics records are showing here. Now there's another condition. We have to filter the data only above mark 60. So in the student exam mark record table, that's the table which records the mark of the student, the mark at values recorded in mark attribute should greater than the value. Here's the value 60. So let's execute this one. You can focus on this mark attribute. Here when I execute this one, only the values more than 60 marks are showing here, 89, 90, 78.24, like that. And here's the last condition. We are going to filter the data using the term name second term. Here in the exam term table, term name should equal to second term. Second term. Okay. Here the first term marks and second term marks are showing here, but we need only the second term marks. Let's execute this one. Here only these two records are the final answer. Now using this final answer, we have to show these specific attributes: admission number, first name, last name, mark, and date of examination. So let's go back and change this asterisk mark. First I need to show the student index number. So in student table, student index number, and then we can show multiple attributes by separating the attributes using this mark comma. And again in the student table, I need to show the first name of the student, comma. Again in the student table, I need to show the last name. And let's go back to the question. Here we have to show the mark of that student and also the examination date. So it's easy to show these details because we combine all the tables together, so all the attributes are in our answer. Now we can filter only these attributes by specifying the name. So in student exam mark record table, I need to show the mark of the student. And here's the last one. In exam term table, I need to show the exam date. Now these are the final attributes we want to show. Let's execute this one. Here index number, first name, last name, mark, and exam date. So this is the final answer, and this is the query we use to get this answer. And we complete the fourth part of the question. Here's the final part. Find the number of students in class 11A who scored more than 60 marks in science subject in second term examination. Okay. Again, in this question, you can see we need to find only the number of students under these conditions. So again, there's no need to connect all the tables. Like in the fourth one, we didn't have to show details in different tables. There's only one value related to a single table. So let's go to our HDSQL browser and write our query. Okay, let's clear this one. For this question, the student exam mark record will be the main table again, because this table has the connection to other tables, and in the question we have to filter the data in subject using subject ID and exam term ID, and also the class. So all the 5 tables are involving, because the class table have a relationship to the student table. So let's go to our query tab. Let's write the select query to our main table. Select asterisk from, here's the main table in exam mark DB student exam mark record table. Let's execute this one here. These are the details in this table. Now we have to filter these details using our condition. So here's the first condition. I'm using the keyword where, and I'm going to filter the data using the class name. So then if we use the subquery method, we can't directly write a subquery to this class table and filter the ID using the class name, because in the main table you can see there's no attribute related to the class table. In the student table, that's the table. Let me show you the student table. This is the table. That's the table which have the relationship to the student table, and after that the student table, the index number for into the student exam mark record table. So that's the connection. So if we write a select query using the class name, first we have to filter the data using the student index number, and when we are output the student index number, we have to filter the students who are in class 11A. So first we have to mention the attribute in the main table. So in student exam mark record table, student index number should equal. Actually in this case we can't use the equal mark, because there will be more than one day values outputted from the subquery. So we have to use the keyword int. And here's the subquery. I need to output the index number in student table. So here in student table we need to output the index number. First we have to filter the you have to output the index number in the student table and filter the values in the student table using that index number. So in student table, from exam mark DB, I'm mentioning the table, student table, where, and in the student table, when the index number is filtering in the student table, we have to filter the data using the class ID. So in student table, the class ID should equal to, and this is the next subquery. You can see we wrote a subquery within subquery. So select. Now we can write our asterisk mark. Now we can write our select query to the class table and filter the ID using the class name. So in class table, class ID should output, and here I mentioned the table in exam mark DB class table, where again in class table class name should equal to class 11A. Let's go back to the question and verify that one. Oh, yes, class 11A. Now we can execute this one here. In the result, there will be only class 11A students. Let me show you that one again. Let's cut this condition and execute the main query. Here you can see there are 48 records. Now see what happened when I execute the query with the condition. It broke down to 24 records, so it filter only the class 11A students. Now we can write our next conditions. Here is the first one. Here's the next one. I'm going to filter the data using the subject name science. So we have to write a select query to the subject table, but before that we have to mention the attribute in the main table. So we have to write the keyword and in student exam mark record table, subject ID should equal to the ID which will output from this select query. Now we can write our select query to our subject table, which will output the subject ID. So in subject table, it should output the subject ID, and here I mention the table again in exam mark DB subject table. This is the condition where in subject table subject name should equal to science. Let's go back to the question, and here you can see we have to filter the data using the subject name. Now in the you can see there are IDs related to different subjects 1, 2 and 3, but the ID of the subject science is number 2. So when I execute this one, you can see only the number 2 ID is showing in our result. Now again there's another condition. Here we have to filter the data using the marks, and the marks should be over 60 limit. So in student exam mark record table, the mark attribute should the values in mark attribute should greater than the value 60. So let's execute this one. Here you can see there are values under 60, 45.52. Let's see what happened when we execute this one. Here all the marks below 60 disappeared in our record, and only the marks beyond 60 limit are showing here. And this is the final condition. You can see we have to filter the data using the term name, the second term. So we have to write a subquery to the to output the term ID, the second term ID. So first I'm going to mention the attribute in main table. So student exam mark record table, the exam term ID should equal to the ID which will output from this subquery select. I need to output the exam term ID in exam term table. Term ID from in exam mark DB. This is the table exam term, and this is the condition where we need to output the ID where exam name equal to, let's go to the question, equal to second term. Okay, second term. Here is the final answer. You can see the term ID of the second term test is number 2. Here number 2. And also the subject ID of science is number 2, and these are the students who studies in class 11A, and these are the marks beyond 60 limit. Now this is the final answer. Now we can count the value using the count attribute. count keyword, and I'm going to insert the values in student index number in the main table, student exam mark record table, the student index number. Here the records, the final answer is number 3, and I'm going to change the attribute name to num of students. Okay, now this is the final answer. We completed the fifth part and the final part of question 27, and I think that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching.